Dennis, you've heard that old adage, right? About, people like stories, not lectures.
Exactly. I can I can remember back in college. I mean, professors that sat there and lectured to you, I'd fall asleep. Ones
Uh-huh.
that actually painted a picture or told a story, you were engaged and you were involved. And I mean, and today we all watch movies and TV shows and stuff, and those are they're telling stories. That's we enjoy as a human. We enjoy that. We like to hear stories.
I think it starts at a young age when our parents would read us bedtime stories or
Yeah.
be able to let us, picture in our mind. And I remember story time as a young kid. And that was probably one of my favorite parts of the day. We never really outgrew that. And I think that if you can master the art of storytelling, it gives you a bit of an advantage that other people don't have. And the most important thing that I learned today on today's interview was really that you need to have a story about your company, the whys, the where, and all the elements there. It really is something more than just like a marketing spiel. We all need to have our mission and vision statements. That's great. But if you can really get people emotionally connected to the story of your company, it gives everybody a lot of reason to want to be able to go that extra mile. And Dennis, you give an example in the interview here about the importance that it impacted your reason to even go with a particular company. I thought that was
Yeah.
an important thing that you brought up.
Yeah. And I think it's one where and the story needs to come from the heart. It can't be something where it's just made up. It's gotta
Mhm.
be real. It's gotta be you've gotta be able to paint that picture for the person that's the receiving hearing the message. And then as if you got a team, the team has to know the story. You can't just hold on to it by yourself, and that's what makes it valuable for the company. And so today's guest, I think you're gonna find really intriguing. He tells lots of stories, so it's great if you're just listening. It's a great because he paints some great pictures. There's one
Right.
talking about first grade that brought me back to first grade, and I could see that in my head as he talked. I hope you had the same experience.
Charley Timmins is he's an entrepreneur. He's been doing this for many, many years. He'd say he goes way back in time, and we'll let you listen to the interview when he tells you the story of when he started. But he's the chief insight officer for PMA LLC, and he shares some insights about stories. And really, the stories that he's going to tell in here are captivating and really interesting. So let's take a listen. This is a very fascinating interview.
WFH with two guys. Now here's Benny and Dennis.
Hey, Dennis, the importance of really being able to relate your business to not only your employees, but also to your clients and customers. It's really important to have that story, that whole idea about who you are, what it's all about. That's really something that is really critical for a lot of companies to be able to understand themselves.
Yeah, I mean, and it's more than just marketing or branding per se. It's the why. Why did I start this? Why do I do
Right.
this? And what brings it? What's the passion in my heart that makes this come to life? And all of us have a story, and the stories evolve and change. And I mean, I've worked at many companies that have great stories, and then some that have had bad stories along the way. And they learn from those stories, and that they again, it's kind of a treasure if done right. They pass it on to the next generation, the next round of employees, so that that legacy stays there. And if not, it just becomes another company, and there's nothing to it. And if you think about, people are all about relationships, and stories help you develop those relationships. And that's why I think it's so important. And we all know it, but a lot of us don't do it or think about it.
Yeah. And so, really, to help crystallize and clarify the idea of story, we brought in the expert today. So, Charlie, thank you for stopping by today.
My pleasure.
Hey, so, Charlie, the first question that comes to mind about story is why does a company's story matter more today than ever before?
We're living in a time where there's a tremendous amount of skepticism in the market. Buyers are not as willing to accept what we're saying. They really listen and they want to understand, why should I do business with you versus a competitor? A story is a way of humanizing ourselves and our business to attract the types of people with whom we want to work. That's why it's so critical to be able to communicate to buyers about you, your company, why you're doing what you're doing, how you're doing it, and most importantly, what type of outcomes are they going to get from your organization.
And Charlie, I assume
It,
you
it,
want that story that if you've got 10 employees, you hope that that story is going to be very similar about the company specifically from all 10 employees, that you don't want to have 10 different stories, because and that's where some of the companies mess it up, because some of the employees are just there to sell and they don't bother to really learn the story. And to me, that's the important part for people, is that everybody, the accountant, the receptionist, the salesperson, they all need to know the story. I know when I went to work at Frito-Lay, or I actually interviewed at Frito-Lay in Dallas, the receptionist at the very front counter, she told the story. That was why I went to Frito-Lay. It wasn't because the higher level people I was interviewing with. The lady at the front counter for 5 minutes stood there and told me about what made Frito-Lay hum and tick and why it was a great place to work. And it was like, I want to work here because the lady at the front counter is passionate about this place.
Exactly correct. I did a work with a small company. They had about 15 employees. And we had a workshop. And one of the things I did in the workshop is had them write down what is the purpose of this company. And then they read out loud what they thought the purpose of the company was. What do you think the results were?
Many different answers.
Exactly correct. If we are confused about our story, imagine what the buyer is going to think. When the buyer senses that there is not coherence, that creates doubt. Nobody buys if they doubt. So there needs to be a consistent story at every level of the company as to why we're doing what we're doing. Today, 60, 70% of the employees are disengaged in a company. And one of the common things they complain about is, I don't know why we're doing what we're doing. I don't know what I'm doing to contribute to the bigger picture. That's a communication problem that starts at the very top. The owner may know, but everybody has to know that. And unfortunately, in the onboarding process, they don't get into that, which is a big, big miss. You could be out at a Memorial Day celebration. One of your employees meets somebody, tells the story of the company. Suddenly, that person becomes a prospect for the service of that organization based on what that employee said. So it's important that everybody gets on the same page and understands how to do it.
So, hey, Charlie, how does a weak story show up in sales, hiring, or even what Dennis had said, brand perception, all that stuff? How does a weak story really influence that?
What companies end up with, Benny, is not their ideal client. They're going to settle for a different kind of client, one that may be price sensitive. Therefore, you can't get as much money out of them as you believe your product is worth. They become that client that's always asking questions, is always doubting what you're doing because they didn't buy into you in the beginning. They still have doubts. They bought you because maybe you were the better of two options in their mind. But again, it affects us. It affects the lifetime earnings that you may get from that organization because they're uncertain. There's a gentleman that wrote a book called Sheep Don't Eat Complicated Grass. And what happens is what comes out of our mouths sometimes confuses people. So we have to have a similar kind of story.
How long have you been doing this, Charlie? You obviously have a lot of experience in this. Has this been something you've been doing for quite some time?
Thanks for that question, Benny. How long have I been? First grade. No, seriously, I was born and raised an Irish Catholic. And if you know anything about Irish Catholic kids, they go to school, they get dressed in uniforms, they line up in alphabetical order. So I was in a classroom, Benny, that had 60 boys and girls. They were all lined up alphabetically. I'm the letter T, so I'm up against the window. And there was only one person driving performance. She was about 8 feet tall. She had this thing on top of her head to make her look bigger. Anyway, she was a pro. She was using mentoring as a tool to keep everybody moving forward. Because back in the day, it only went as fast as the slowest kid. So when a student would become, let's say, finished and they become fidgety, she would say, hey, Bill, go over and help Mary. Or Harriet, I'd like you to help Johnny. And they would go over and try to help that person solve the problem because they were stuck. And when you're stuck, you're not moving forward. So one day, Benny, I hear my name. She said, Timmy. And that was my nickname. Timmy, go help Mary Ellen. My response was, Mary Ellen? She was the prettiest and smartest girl in the class. And little old me with my imposter syndrome, because I knew what I liked and she was what I liked. I was scared to death. So I took my chair and I started to drag it along the wall by the window. Now, the reason the chair moved is we used to have to hide under desks because we were going to be obliterated and we had to hide under our desk. So I took that chair and walked it all the way around, and I sat down next to her in the first aisle. And she looked at me and as if, "What are you doing here, fella?" And I explained that I'm here to help you. We dove in to attack the issue. I don't know what the subject was, but I'm sure it wasn't math. I'm sure it wasn't. But it didn't take very long. And all of a sudden, she sat bolt upright, turned her head to me, beautiful red hair, beautiful blue eyes, and she flashed me a grin that I'll never forget. I live for those grins because that's a breakthrough. People have the light bulb moment. They now can move forward to wherever they need to go. Businesses go through the same thing. They get stuck. They don't know why. Maybe we should lower our price. Maybe we should offer a variation of the. They need to get through that breakthrough because they're on a journey to scale to a certain level because the owner has a vision of where he wants to be. And everybody in that company has to be on the same page to support that type of thing. So I've been doing it since the first grade. When I look back on my life, all the great successes that I've had that were acknowledged by other people all had to do with me using my talents to help people find a better way of doing things. What got them there wasn't getting them to where they needed to go. I had to get outside the box, think differently, help them understand that there is a better way to do things. And once we get working and looking at all the different options, the level of trust that they have for me goes up and they implement what I recommend and they get to where they need to go.
So Charley, key question. Did you stay in touch with Mary Ellen as you grew up, or did she go on?
I don't know what the heck happened to her, Dennis. Because I'm not my mind wandered. Actually, I moved away.
I thought you might tell us you married her or something. I was like, okay, this will be a great story. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Dennis, my wife asked me that same question. Whatever happened to her?
That's a good point. Yeah, I think your teacher, if her name was Sister Edith Marie, we had the same one. But
her name was Sister St. Martin. Never forget her.
Hey, Charley, it occurs to me when you were thinking about story, how do you help leaders uncover the real story, the story behind the surface, rather than just kind of like a marketing narrative example? How do you really kind of get to the meat of that?
Would you like to hear a story?
Yeah. The stories are great. Stories are great. I mean, as a listener, you love to hear stories. I mean, versus being lectured, stories are definitely easier to comprehend.
You'll never forget Mary Ellen.
No, I can visually see myself in first grade. We all went through that same thing.
Dennis, I listened to one of your earlier episodes when you were talking about networking, and I am in a networking group here in Philadelphia, and there's a member of that particular group. I'm very fond of him. But when you talk to him, you don't get a feeling of humanity. He's very bright, very smart, but it's like kissing stainless steel in International Falls, Minnesota in dead of winter. There's no feeling to it at all. And he would always sit there and tell people, here's what I do. I work with leadership teams to help them increase short-term cash flow without affecting long-term strategy. And he goes on and explains it. And it's very conceptual. It's very abstract, but I don't kiss it. I can't put my arms around it. So I said to him, well, why do you do this? And he said, well, I have kids. Why do you do this? I asked him why about 6 or 7 times. And finally, he got angry. He slammed his hand down on the desk and says, Charley, do you know who Chainsaw Al Dunlap was? And I said, sure, absolutely. He was brought into Scott Paper Company by Kimberly Clark to help in the transition. He said, I was at Scott Paper Company. I was one of 400 people that Kimberly Clark retained to help in the transfer. And I would sit at my window, Charley, and I would watch people I'd worked with for 10 or 15 years walk out with their possessions in a banker's box and go to their car, and their life was destroyed. Charley, I never want any owner to have to resort to that. And I'm going to make everyone I work with is successful so the employees keep their job. I said, that's your why. He said, well, that's why you do it. And that human story is going to tell potential buyers of your service, I want to work with this guy because he cares about me. He cares about my people. The story he was telling, great, wonderful, great results for companies, but I didn't have that connective tissue. Peter Drucker has told us, Dennis, people make decisions in their hearts, they rationalize it in their brain. So when he tells that story now, he grabs people in the gut and say, hey, wow, this guy's on a mission. That's a little bit different than saying, hey, I need to make more money. Did that answer the question?
It does.
Yeah. I mean, and for me, I mean, it's funny. My next question I was going to ask you is, what makes a story actually memorable. And I think you may have touched on a little bit of it, but do you have anything to add to kind of that thought? What's a story that makes it memorable? What
It's
makes a
about
story memorable?
it's about somebody else. It's not about me. It's not about Benny. We're telling a story of how there are problems that we all love to solve. We are in search of a problem that we love to solve. That's what business is all about. That's how companies are created. I have a solution to a problem. No one else is addressing it. I want to address it. So we have to understand what are the problems that we want to solve. We find somebody that we've solved that problem for. We explain to the listener that journey together, what we did together, how they solved the problem with the benefit of me and the outcome they got versus the outcome they would have gotten had they not engaged with me. But it's not about me. They're the ones that did the hard work. They did the emotional work of change and transforming their thinking go in a different direction to do that. So there's a framework to telling a story. There are probably 9 or 10 frameworks for stories that exist, Benny. The one that I prefer is something called the story brand model. It's very, very simple to understand, and it's very easy to tell a story. What do I do? What problems do I solve? What do my clients get out of that short term and long term? It's very simple to tell the story.
And we've all got stories. That's the best part. I mean, I think also, Benny, I think you're speaking from the heart. I think that's when it's regurgitated and doesn't have meaning to it, it's not a story. But if it's coming from the heart, because when you were telling the first great story, I mean, you could see the passion, and it was a moment in your life that impacted you that you're able to tell the story. And I could visually see that in my head because I could relate to my first and second grade teacher and how they were the same way. And I could put myself in your story and say, "Ooh, I really get that." And if there was something you were going to help solve, it's like, okay, I could work with Charley because I'm on the same page and I can talk to Charley about this similar types of experiences.
We've all experienced highs and lows. I tend to get involved with people when they're at a low. Why isn't it working? How come this marketing plan isn't producing? We're not getting an ROI. What's next? They have these questions they don't have answers for. And what people tend to do is they tend to look for the answers out here. The answers are inside. And I take them on an inward journey to understand themselves better. People buy Dennis Jackson before they buy what Works does. And they don't know who they are. They don't know what matters to them. And therefore, if they don't know what matters to them, they can't connect to what matters to their clients, to the buyer, if you will.
No.
So it's got to
You
be
hit it.
relevant.
You hit it on the head because we did testimonials with about 6 of our clients, and every single one of them, we had to go back and edit because they said, I bought because of Dennis Jackson. They didn't even mention Work Solutions. They mentioned my name. And so to your point, they were buying my story, not Work Solutions per se, because I am Work Solutions. And so it was interesting. It was like, okay, it really is about me. And if I'm going to bring other salespeople on, I've got to be able to have them understand that story so that they can be buying from them as well. Because they're not going to buy from Works. They're buying from the person that can relate the story to those potential customers.
I have a suggestion. Take a look at what you would consider to be your top competitors. Go to their websites. What do you feel here about them or their company? If you're not feeling it, they're never going to deliver it because they're not aware that they need to communicate in that manner. Because there's so much distrust, there's so much doubt, there's so much concern. We have to connect with them. And most people's websites, it's all sales, it's all sales, it's all sales. They want to get to know you. That's what they want to be able to do. And you have to give them a doorway in. And the stories are a doorway into getting to know you because they'll relate to some part of your story. And that's the beginning of a great conversation. So I would talk to you, Benny. I talked to Benny about that teacher that he probably remembered where he may have had a similar experience.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah. Yeah.
And we can begin building off of that. Just
Yeah.
think of the people whose products or services you buy and think of the reasons why. How much did HeartShare, not MindShare, how much did HeartShare have to do with your decision?
Let me ask, Charley, is it hard for leaders to talk about their own story? Is that challenging for A lot of them.
When we leave our homes and we go into society in kindergarten or first grade, we begin to change. We lose touch with who we naturally are and we become socialized. And I worked for Xerox. I was a Zeroid. I did things the way Xerox wanted them done. I didn't get hired by IBM, thank God, because I would have been a different person. They would shape me the way they want to shape me. Now, when we look back on this, we say, wow, that does happen in business. Why would I want to go into business? But what happened is I became this person that wasn't really connected to who I was. What I wasn't allowed to do, what I naturally do best, which is always try to find a better way. When I wasn't allowed to do that, I would usually get fired. I would say to the boss, you have a great idea, boss, but I think I got a better one. Now, what boss is going to tolerate that? What narcissistic sociopath is going to put up with that? Goodbye. So it took me a long time to realize that the thing that drives me the most, trying to make things better, is not wanted in certain places. They have their house of cards. They know what they want to get done, and I'm the fly in the ointment. So get rid of me. So when we know who we are, we make better decisions about that, right? People, when they select a marriage partner, the reason there's so much divorce is they don't know what they're looking for.
No.
The second one is usually a little bit better because now they know what they need. Same thing. If we don't know who we are, what our values are, what our beliefs are, we have to continually question our beliefs because our beliefs are originally put in our head by our family, by our church. We have to question those things as we go through life because the world doesn't necessarily operate that way. Once people get a very clear picture of what I call their authentic self, who they really are, not who they're pretending to be. Most people fake it till they make it. That gets them in trouble eventually. But when they realize who they really are, there's a calm that comes up over them. There is more clarity about the future, and they're able to see what they might be able to do other than what other people have wanted them to do professionally. I hope that answers your question.
It
That's
does.
great.
And the question I have is a follow-up is that now when we've defined or created this story, what do we do with it next? What should we do with it after that?
I think you have to, it's like comedians with a joke. You got to go out and you got to tell the joke a lot and see what reaction it is. A famous comedian who played Vegas continually, he said I had 3 shows in my head. And I would go out for the early show, which is usually the retirees, and I would tell a joke from each one of those shows. And it would tell me which show I'm going to go with, what series of jokes. He said the last show, always after midnight, when people were drunk, I always went with the blue material, is what he said. Always went with the blue material. Why? That's what the audience wants. So you have to tell the story out there because, Benny, you might hear somebody say, so wait a minute, Benny, stop for a minute. Are you telling me this? Yeah. That's what I'm telling you. You got to adjust the story. They did not understand it right away. There was a disconnect. So when you are telling your story and there's a disconnect, you keep talking and they're still stuck here figuring out what those words meant. So you got to try it, bounce it off people, low risk interactions with people. Not necessarily people that know, love, and trust you, but just anybody, and get some feedback on that and say to them at the end, now, what did I just share with you? What's the moral of it? What's your takeaway from that story? And if it aligns with what your intention was, great. Use it. Make it part of your package.
So let me go the opposite direction for a second, really quick here. Is there a story that you want companies to stop telling? Is there something out there that maybe there isn't, but I thought is there something that you would prefer that companies would just stop talking about?
I have never been asked that question before, Benny. I think anything that's overhyped. I can remember I was babysitting for a family when I was younger, and I arrived at the house when the father was having words with his son. The kid apparently had reached into his mother's purse and taken some money, and they were going at it. They stopped when I got there. The father came to me and I apologized, but I know he's guilty. I looked at him, what are you talking about? Because he's talking too much. The more words he used, it was like a smoke screen trying to. So sometimes when you listen to companies tell their story, they're using too many words. If somebody can't summarize it in a sentence or two, they don't understand it.
That's a good one.
And it's usually the shorter ones that do it. Steve Jobs, when he introduced the Mac, just 2 words. Do you remember what the 2 words were underneath the logo?
Think different.
That's it. Thank you. It was memorable. You remember. You were a young kid then, Billy, and you remember.
Yeah.
That's a story.
Yeah.
When Ernest Hemingway lived down there in Florida.
Are you talking about like Key West or Key
There
Largo,
you
was
are,
it? Or
Key West, and he had a certain stool at a bar. It was an outdoor bar. He would sit there and he would write. And as the night went on, he would drink more and more alcohol. One night, a tourist came up to him and he said, "Hey, you're that Hemingway guy." "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And was trying to brush the guy off. So the guy put a paper napkin in front of him. He said, "If you're so good, write me a story." So he scribbled some stuff on a napkin, gave it back to the guy. And what it said in 6 words was, "Baby booties for sale, never worn."
yeah.
That's a story. You have an opportunity to make what we're talking to people about memorable. It's less about the facts and it's more about the story.
Interesting.
Charlie, this has been a really interesting conversation, and I love this. The idea of story, and there's so many elements to it. And there's a lot of things I know that we probably didn't even touch on and couldn't cover. There are going to be some folks out there I know that are going to be interested and want to get a hold of you. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
It's right there on the screen, Benny.
Okay. For our audio listeners, let's go ahead and give them that information, Charlie. That your mobile number out there?
610-304-0939. That's in the Philadelphia area.
Mm-hmm.
And for
My email
email?
address is very simple. CJT, they're my initials, at charlestimmins.com.
Perfect.
And
I'm
of
on
course,
LinkedIn.
you're on LinkedIn too as well. You can get a hold of Charlie there. Charlie, this has been a
And
wonderful.
Benny, Charlie's offering a 30-minute Zoom call free of charge for
Yeah.
any listeners to
Wow,
reach out to
okay.
him. So that's a nice feature. So I encourage people to reach out and have a 30-minute call with him.
That's all because of you, Dennis.
There you go.
It's a story that Dennis was telling. So
There we go.
I love it. I love it. Charlie, this has been a great discussion. I think that there's just so many more elements about this. And I certainly was writing some notes down. So thank you very much for stopping by. We really appreciate it.
You've been listening to WFH with Two Guys. We'll see you next time.